Creatures looks at the relationship between Egyptians and animals, and at this very unusual practice of mummifying animals.
From mysterious corpses and alien bodies to sinister secrets that were best kept hidden, there have been a lot of recent discovery, and today we will look at some of them. So,
the initial excavation yields 26 skeletons, almost all intact. Their bones exposed to the light for the first time in over 1,000 years.
Sit back and relax because this video is going to leave you very intrigued. Without any delay, let's dive in. Number 1, the mummified baby. You've probably heard a lot about King Tut, but this one secret is going to leave your mouth wide open. Inside the tomb, there were a lot of tempting treasures. From weapons to gold, the tomb was loaded with an insane number of valuables. But all these glittering things might have overshadowed one very important discovery. Within his tomb, there were 2 perfectly preserved mummified bodies of baby girl.
The more he took, the more chance he had of defeating the demons and overcoming the obstacles that lay ahead.
Scientists were left baffled by this discovery. Who were they? The shock was yet to come. Scientists ran a DNA analysis of the girls, and they came out to be a perfect match with King Tut. Yes, these babies were daughters of the young king. Now, that's a secret that took some time to digest, but the shock soon turned into grief. Both the babies were stillborns.
Like and subscribe right now, and you'll have amazing luck for the rest of the week.
One of them lived only for 4 months in the mother's body, while the other one spent a full term. But she still didn't live long enough to see the world for the first time. The discovery was rare, but tragic at the same time. Number 2, ancient body. This cemetery is choked full of body, but unlike your everyday cemetery, this one is ancient, with mummies upon mummies in the necropolis.
Necropolis to the west of Minya, to the cemetery and necropolis of the Ashmonin, which was the capital of the 15th nome of Upper.
The coffins are lined up in rooms, with nearly every surface having a mummy lying on it. Isn't that spooky? This cemetery was found in Middle Egypt, and it is a startling 2,000 years old. Number 3, the gold mask of death. Not all mummies have masks or are made out of gold. Then, why is this one special? The answer might scare you. This is the gold mask of King Tutankhamun, and it is one of the most popular artifacts in Egypt, weighing nearly 24 pounds and standing at a height of 21 inches.
Very strong adhesive had been used, an artificial glue, and that was very difficult to remove.
It is made entirely of gold. Boy, these people were filthy rich. But this mask was much more royal than the others. Unlike the other masks on mummies, this one was designed to cover both the heads and the shoulders of the court. The fine details and the intricate craftsmanship meant that a lot of effort was put into the mask.
It had been glued back together, but needed further repair work after images surfaced online showing a line of glue around its chin.
That isn't surprising, because King Tut's tomb surely had some insane value. Apparently, these masks were designed to help souls recognize their mummified body, but that might not have worked. Recently, a group of scientists were studying the mask's construction. They found out that the portrait of the face section replaced an earlier mask. That would suggest that this mask must have been made for somebody else. Later, it might have been altered to fit the portrait of King Tut, but who could that other person be? Sadly, there is no clear answer. Number 4, the underwater city excavation. Egyptian artifacts are everywhere, even in the depths of the ocean. But this was a special work site. For starters, the archaeologists didn't just find a few objects under the sea,
which the archaeologists believe stood at the entrance to a temple now underwater. The ancient cities were called Thonis, Heraclean, and Canopus.
No, this discovery was much bigger. It took 7 years and an area of 40 square miles to excavate 3 entire cities. Yes, these cities were submerged about 1,200 years ago, but it had a lot of interesting finds buried down under. There were around 250 artifacts that were soon put up for display, but one of the biggest finds was a 30-foot pharaoh. The thing was so huge that it probably was the biggest statue under the sea. Who knows what else is hiding there? Number 5, the Mummification Workshop. We all know Egyptians mummified their corpses. It was kind of their thing. But how exactly did they pull this off? Just like you, scientists were baffled for decades too. But they recently found the secret to how the ancient Egyptians turned corpses into mummies.
The tombs of wealthy Egyptians were filled with treasures to accompany them to the afterlife.
They had an entire workshop dedicated to mummification. It is exactly as creepy as it sounds. Inside the workshop, there were multiple rooms with 6-feet-long stone beds. Close to these beds, there were all kinds of tools for opening up the body, and even canopy jars to store the organs of the corpse. The workshop also had tens and tens of vessels filled with different chemicals. Scientists managed to figure out the ingredients, but it only opened up a room of more secrets. Apparently, some of these chemicals were shipped to Egypt all the way from Peru.
Probably used for different stages of the mummification process.
That means mummification was a bustling business back then. But there's more. Scientists found that the Egyptians knew a lot about embalming than they gave them credit for it. These people knew how to remove the unpleasant smells from a corpse and how to keep the bacteria from spreading onto the skin. Heck, they even knew how to reduce the moisture on the skin. The ancient Egyptians were professionals, and that's probably why we keep finding mummies in great shape today. Number 6, a dump site for mummy. Finding a single mummy sends the researchers into a state of uncontrolled excitement. Can you imagine stumbling upon hundreds of mummies on a tiny piece of land? I bet scientists would explode into a state of frenzy. Well, you won't have to wait too long to see that. Apparently, that's exactly what happened during a routine excavation in Cairo. This discovery was so big that it broke all records.
Immediately, this papyrus was moved to the Egyptian Museum for sterilization.
The group of scientists found 250 painted coffins with mummies inside at a small work site. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. A few yards away, there were hundreds of bronze statues lined up underground. One statue was headless and is assumed to be the statue of the architect who built the pyramid. Why was he headless? That's only one part of the mystery. Nobody knows why a large number of these artifacts were dumped on this land. But here is where it gets interesting. All of this was found in an area of 100 yards only. Yet the worksite is about more than 400 yards long. What other treasures could be present here? Only time will tell. Number 7. New pyramid. Who knew Egypt still had pyramids to reveal? Only recently, archaeologists discovered a brand new pyramid. The place used to be a quarry when the workers found limestone cut by hand. The specialists immediately knew they had found something big, and the search for the entrance began. And soon, it was found. The best part?
Someone got here first and robbed the burial chamber.
This pyramid is thought to be fully sealed as of yet. So, archaeologists may finally get to see an untouched pyramid tomb at last. At least that was the plan. But when the pyramid was unsealed, the tomb had everything already looted. The strangest part is that no one knows how the thief even got in. Number 8. Secrets of the tomb. KV5. KV5 is the largest tomb to be ever found in Egypt, but you won't believe how long it took for the scientists to figure that out. Make a guess. For years, archaeologists worked on its excavation, but they had no clue what they were sitting on. There was a jumble of remains scattered all over the tomb.
Enlarged and usurped it. From the entrance of the expansive royal tomb, straight passage extends, adorned with magnificent murals.
Scientists couldn't even match the bones with a person. That's how creepy it got. The only thing they could tell was that a few of these skeletons were of boys, while the others were of girls. I think it is safe to say that even now, the tomb's secrets remain hidden. Researchers have excavated 121 rooms in the tomb, but this number is expected to go much higher, crossing at least 150. That means that the KV5 is still not fully explored. If that's the case,
on the newly uncovered reliefs were cartouches bearing royal names.
Who knows what else is hiding in these rooms? Plus, Ramesses II was known to have more than 100 kids. Were they all buried here, or did he have any favorites? Most of all, why did the heirs of the pharaoh even need a tomb that was underground? It beats me. Number 9, food. Tutankhamun must have been super hungry. Yup, he had tons of food items. From bread to wine, onions, garlic, dates, and even meats and poultry. But why?
The answer lies in some of the smallest items discovered in his tomb.
The dead don't eat, do they? Well, according to the ancient Egyptians, you actually do eat after you die. And for one of the most famous pharaohs in history, you need to have the best food possible. So, it is no surprise his tomb was full of such luxurious food for the time. Number 10, the dog cemetery. Ancient Egyptians had many bizarre traditions, and they used to flex them very arrogantly. But some customs were so elegant that they left even the scientists speechless. One example is their affinity towards dogs. The Egyptians were so fond of this species that they went and built a cemetery for them. Yeah, throw in animal mummies as if mummies weren't strange enough.
Clues that support the role domestic dogs played in ancient Egypt can be found over 2,000 miles away.
But it wasn't just a random animal mummy that these archaeologists found. No, they unearthed a whole cemetery where 60 dogs were buried. As they dug deeper, the more bizarre it got. Lying close to the mummified dogs, researchers found traces of leather. It came from collars and leashes that were tied to the dogs. But why would the Egyptians tie the leash to a dead animal? There are two answers for that: in memory of the hunting dogs and to honor the guard dog. Apparently Egyptians were fond of hunting, but didn't like going out on expedition, so
is superb, especially with the dog, with his tail that curls up. He looks as if he's about to open up his eyes and start wagging and barking.
they made use of their dogs, who would chase ibex and deer in a matter of a few minutes. The Egyptians would release the leashes and the canines would do the hunting for them. Number 11, strange socks. These eerie socks aren't for any two-toed creepy Egyptian. No, they are for regular people. But why did anyone in a desert need to wear these bizarre socks?
Knitting is worked with 2 needles, but the technique which was used for those socks is worked with 1 single needle and a short length of yarn.
The answer might surprise you. Egypt isn't just a warm country. Cold winds do come around for some time, and that's when the sandals become practically useless. So the Egyptians came up with a crafty solution to keep their feet warm while wearing sandals. Invention indeed is the mother of necessity. Number 12, the ancient zoo. Long before the pyramids came into the picture, there was something else that kept the pharaohs busy. A zoo. Elephants, leopards, baboons, hippos, lions, and many other exotic species were all part of this massive zoo.
This has allowed us to get carbon-14 dates, which has been showing us that many of these animals...
Not all of them were native to Egypt, though. Some of them were shipped all the way from Africa. The animals were all kept close to the royal family, but the worst part, that they were all sacrificed when their owner died. So, it wasn't a happy ending for them.
The sacred animal for each god can also act on behalf of a person in this world.
Now that we have covered the Egyptian artifacts, we are going to move on to the odd objects found around the world. Trust me, this world has a lot of room for weird things, and I am only getting started. Number 13, the Shroud of Turin. A baffling discovery that was made in France thousands of years ago remains a mystery even today. This is the Shroud of Turin that many hold dear to their hearts. It is a piece of cloth stretched to a height of 14 feet, with a man's face imprinted on top of it.
Not everyone's convinced that the Shroud is a genuine holy relic.
Here's where it gets interesting. A lot of people think that it is the face of Jesus, but nobody has been able to prove that. One expert tried to debunk that theory by calling the cloth a painting, but science proved that there was no sign of paint on the cloth. Others think that it is a primitive version of a negative of an image. A few suggest that a chemical reaction between a body wrapped tightly in fabric might have formed this image, but nobody is entirely sure. What do you think it is? Number 14, the signs of early cannibalism. Nothing could have prepared the archaeologists for this disturbing discovery in Virginia. Lying in the dirt was a human skull that was terribly mutilated, along with a severed leg of a girl. To make it worse, a few animal skeletons were present there too. Some butchered horses, dogs, and other animal bones were all part of this massacre. Plus,
there was 2/3 of a skull and part of a leg bone that belonged to what they believe was a 14-year-old girl.
It didn't help tone down the creepiness when the scientists figured out that it was a cellar room. But here's where it gets really spooky. The artifacts belong to the early 17th century, which was also called the starving time. As the name suggests, there wasn't a lot of food available back then. This forced the people to eat their own out of desperation. When the scientists analyzed the human skull, their worst fears only turned true.
Which describe the starving time and the desperation of the colonists.
The skull had many marks suggesting that somebody tried to crack it open. It indeed was the effort of a cannibal trying to pop open the brain. Yikes. Number 15, aliens of Nazca. Now these mummies will give you the creeps. These 6 mummies were found in the Nazca cave. Now, that may not seem too strange, but that is only till you find out the mummies don't look human at all. These mummies have just 3 fingers per hand. They look straight up like an alien, with weirdly shaped heads, odd numbers of fingers and toes that are too long to be human, and a thin bony figure. They had no ears either. On top of that, the creatures' bodies were covered in a gray-like skin, which is actually somewhat similar to other human mummies found. So, these may actually be super old bodies. Best of all, there are glyphs nearby of alien-like creatures that look just like this. Scientists are working on uncovering the truth of these weird creatures. Who knows what they will end up finding? Number 16, the tiny alien skeleton. Scientists found the most bizarre thing in Chile that sent shockwaves around the world, but the discovery soon turned from a surprise to a tragedy. In 2003, an excavation unearthed a tiny skeleton.
Well, in 2013, a scientist from Stanford University got his hands on Ada and decided to sequence her entire genome.
But It wasn't an ordinary skeleton. It looked nothing like a human. Stretched to a height of merely 6 inches, the skeleton only had 10 pairs of ribs instead of the usual 12. Not to forget, it was strikingly small. Anybody who set eyes on the skeleton called it a tiny alien. It didn't help that the skeleton was found in a ghost town, so the rumors only kept growing. But scientists soon decided to put a stop to the gossip and took the skeleton to the lab. What they found was shocking. Apparently, it was a preterm baby that had a large number of mutations. This might have caused the tiny girl to develop an abnormal physique. Boy, that turned tragic pretty fast, didn't it? Number 17, the graveyard of skeleton. An excavation in Sweden left the scientists with more questions than answers. On the other side of the stone wall, a small group of 100 or 200 people used to live. But in that fort, something strange was waiting to be found. A large graveyard of 26 skeletons.
But these skeletons seem to be lying in the same contorted positions they died in, some 1,500 years ago.
They were sprawled in the dirt in the weirdest of ways. Some of them were lying on top of one another, while one's body was charred, but only midway. It looked nothing as if they were buried there. To add more to the mystery, the skeletons appeared as if they had been hit multiple times with brute force. Nobody could figure out who killed them and why. But then came another startling discovery. One of the skeletons had sheep's teeth in its mouth.
Understand how much the use of these techniques is going to help us to understand.
Why on earth would a human be buried with sheep's teeth inside its mouth? Some people think it was black magic, but it remains unclear. The real question is, what the hell happened out here? Number 18, the Dixon Relics. Scientists came across 3 weird objects in the shaft of the Great Pyramid, but they had no clue it would turn out to be the mystery of the century. The 3 odd things were a massive ball of granite, a hook, and tiny fragments that came from a large block of cedar. What made this discovery strange was the fact that these objects were just lying there in the rubble.
Restrictions imposed to stop the spread of COVID-19 delayed the dating of the rediscovered cedar fragment.
One fascinating thing about the 3rd object has made everyone riddled with amusement. A lot of people agree that the cedar wood is older than the pyramid. Data shows that the cedar wood might have been left by the people who started the concept of pyramids. This is why researchers think that it might have something to do with the construction of the pyramid itself. Although they have yet to prove this, it sure seems interesting. Number 19, the real-life Hobbits. In Indonesia, researchers stumbled upon something mystical. An excavation led the scientists to find a bunch of stone tools. They appeared normal, but they dated back to an era when another human species might have lived. As they dug deeper, they found more clues connecting to the Hobbits.
And so it makes the rest of her anatomy, like her arms and her feet, look large. And this is something that's true of all earlier hominins, as well as even African apes today.
The researchers unearthed a tiny skull that they initially mistook for a baby skull. But then, they realized that the teeth on this skull were permanent. It didn't belong to a baby, but was the skull of a hobbit. Although it is exciting to find signs of other human species on Earth, it does raise one important question. Are the hobbits alive today?
Then, a commotion in the village announces the arrival of a distinguished local, the village elder.
Are they in hiding? There have been sightings of a strange ape man nearby. Could it be the Hobbit? I guess we will find out soon enough. Number 20, the 2 pyramids. Chichen Itza's famous pyramid is an architectural marvel, but it has something spooky hidden inside. The El Castillo is massive. It has a large number of limestone blocks stacked over one another and towering over 100 feet high.
Yet this pyramid is made of tens of thousands of limestone blocks.
The pyramid has 4 staircases, all with 91 steps. It is nothing short of extraordinary, but it is hiding a huge secret. The pyramid is hiding another pyramid inside. That's right, there's another temple inside with a staircase leading up to 2 tiny chambers.
This royal throne, kings watched countless humans sacrificed to the rain god Chak at this nearby altar.
It isn't empty though. There is a throne in the shape of green-eyed jaguar in one chamber, and a mysterious statue in another. But here's what's funny. The Mayans saw a pyramid and decided to upgrade it by building another one on top of it. A bold move like everything else they did. Number 21, the Thevoyich Manuscript. This is probably the world's only book that has never been read. A lot of people have seen it, yes. But nobody knows what's written on there. Here's why. The alphabet written in this book is the only place where scientists have seen this language. They have not been able to find any other connection to this bizarre and whirly set of letters.
Over 62 combined letters and tamgas. Some of these characters
would actually have numerical value and would be used as numbers.
The only thing that gave a little hint to what's written inside is the many graphical and weird images stamped in this manuscript. From floral patterns to bizarre photos of females, scientists think that it might have been a book about herbs and zodiac sign. Although they aren't entirely sure, that is their best guess. What do you think? Number 22, Board Game of Death. This is Senet, a board game that was unlike any other thing you'll see today, but you'd never guess why the Egyptians used to play it. Senet was probably not the first board game in history, but it was the one that got the most attention. It was in fashion for nearly 2,500 years, and yet people didn't use it to pass the time. At least, that's what the gossip mill says. Senet was used as a way to communicate with the dead. It was the bridge that connected the living with the Egyptian realm of dead souls. Yikes. Was it an ancient Ouija board? I can't say for sure, but some people are definitely out there calling it that. There is another popular belief that Senet was given to the dead to help them in their afterlife. I think it is safe to say that it didn't help the dead when they got bored, but it did guide them toward the rightful destination. Now, I can't say which one gives me the most creeps, but this is how it worked in ancient Egypt. Number 23, the bizarre footwear. Ancient Egyptians were known to wear sandals, but this discovery opened up a mystery that even scientists couldn't solve. The temple had 3 pairs of shoes that left the scientists with a lot of questions. On the outside, they looked pretty normal.
When a sandal is made out of gold in order to be carried into the next life with the king.
But here's the problem. These shoes couldn't possibly have been made then. These shoes were made of such structural elements that didn't make their way into ancient Egypt until much later. According to history, the same footwear should have come 500 years later. Yet, here they were, stored in a jar, in an almost perfect condition. Plus, what's shocking is that these shoes were hidden in a tomb. Who was wearing these shoes at the time when sandals were the only known footwear? Did the ancient Egyptians get help from somewhere else? Most of all, why were they kept hidden? I guess we will never know. That's all, folks. Which one of these archaeological finds did you find the most interesting? Do let us know in the comments down below. We would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, share the video, and hit subscribe. Be sure to click on the bell icon as well to stay updated on any of our latest uploads. We have a lot more in store for you. Until next time, stay safe and goodbye.